Good evening, everybody. Extremely happy to be here on a festival day, a festival that's celebrated all across our country. Sankranti, it is called in my state, but this is a festival that has different names in different states. But it's a fun-filled festival where the sun has begun to go north now, so we're going to have longer days. And of course, it's full of fun for children, for elders, for everybody, because there's a lot of kite flying, sweets eating, especially the till good stuff. And of course, there are lots of rangolis that all the women are famous in India, especially down south and in the rural areas. On such a day, we have a wonderful meeting, a webinar between two gigantic personalities, two well-known international personalities. And thank you so much for all of you to be here today on a festival evening. And having said so, let me start my introduction. We are wonderful August speakers today are Mr. Shashi Tharoor and Mr. Sam Pitroda, both very good friends. And let us watch that chemistry that they both share. Let me start with Mr. Sam Pitroda. We all know him as Sam Pitroda, but he's also actually, his real name is Satyan Pitroda. And Satyan Pitroda is a telecom engineer, an inventor, and an entrepreneur. He served as an advisor to the Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi. And during his tenure, he was the first chairman of the India Telecommunication Commission. And I must say, we are proud of him because India IT is what it is today. And that is why he's very correctly known as the father of the IT revolution in India. I'm sure you all agree with it because he is the force and the brain behind India's telecom revolution. And of course, he was also an advisor during Prime Minister Manmohan Singh's time. Sam also, he holds 100 technological patents. He has been involved in several startups. And of course, he's very well known in the Silicon Valley circles. Sam chairs 5 well-known NGOs and is involved in the activities of several philanthropic initiatives. A multifaceted personality. And I would also like to tell you, I'm trying to make it as short because we want more time with both of them. And the political side of him is that he has been made the president of the Indian Overseas Congress. And he does play a key role in shoring up support for our party abroad. And having said this, I must tell you, there's a strange coincidence because IOC, that is Indian Overseas Congress, and All India Professionals Congress in India have begun, have been inaugurated by Rahul Gandhi in the same year, that is 2017. So virtually, we are on the same page as far as the number of years goes. And now I come to Dr. Tharoor, Shashi, as he's known to everybody. Well, Shashi doesn't need an introduction. Of course, neither did Sam did, but there is a little formality. And he, of course, as everybody knows, is a charming personality, an author, a politician, a former international civil servant. And of course, he has an experience of several worlds. Currently, he is in the third term Lok Sabha MP representing Thiruvananthapuram. He has had a hat trick. He won 3 straight elections, and that's not something ordinary in politics because I know I'm a politician myself. And right now, he is the chairman of the Parliamentary Standing Committee, but guess what? For information technology. So these two guys have so much in common. And he has previously served as Minister of State for Human Resources and Development and Minister of State for External Affairs in the Government of India. And during his nearly 3-decade-long prior career at the United Nations, He served as a peacekeeper, a refugee worker, and an administrator at the highest levels, working as an undersecretary to General Kofi Annan. And Dr. Tharoor is also a prolific writer. He's an award-winning author of books which are fiction and non-fiction. Can you believe he's almost finished 2021 books, I think, now? And again, the commonality is he is the chairman of the All India Professionals Congress, and we are proud to work with him. Having said that, the topic that we come to today is something that is really, uh, it has its advantages and disadvantages. Of course, I'm talking of social media, as you know. That is the topic that's going to be discussed by our honorable guests. Now, given how important social media platforms have become to marketing, dissemination of ideas, and election campaign, it is hard to believe that YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter have just recently started. That is only about 2005, 2006. Today, they have become so instrumental for political parties around the world for getting their promises, their messages to voters. The New York Times and other analysts have termed the last US election to be a Facebook election. Can you believe that? We are to go by trends, if we are to go by trends. Public rallies will not in the not so far of future be, they may be not even there. They may be rendered obsolete, at least in evolved democracies. And maybe electioneering will largely be done through social media. But as somebody said, once said that the great power comes with great responsibility. But social media firms and their role in election manipulation has come under a lot of scrutiny. This is the negative part of it, their disadvantages. Key allegations include not curbing the hate speech, political bias, suggestive content delivered to users, and more. The American, European, and Indian governments has summoned the heads of these companies to clarify their firm's role in the above said matters. So, in today's discussion, the key issues we'll be discussing as it will be a freewheeling chat between both our speakers. Now I can say over to both our speakers, starting off with Sam, as by the choice they have come to conclude together. They decided that Sam would be starting. So there you are. I'll come in with the questions later. So over to you, Sam and Shashi.
Thank you, Geeta. It is always good to be with Shashi. He is a very important member of our party. He represents large constituency, and I'm delighted to be on the same platform having a conversation with Shashi. The topic you have selected is very timely, very important, and very complex. I don't think there are very clear answers to the questions we are going to be debating. But based on my experience in the last 55 years in IT and telecom, I believe there are two fundamental issues that dictate as to what is going on in the social media, politics, opinion making, marketing, and all of that. One is about unauthenticated behavior. When I go on social media, I can go as Sam Pitroda, I can go as Sam Pitroda 1, Sam Pitroda N, Sam Pitroda 7, and you don't know which one is real Sam Pitroda. And then you cannot really distinguish as to what I say under what name. So you may hear something from Sam Pitroda, which is totally fake Sam Pitroda. It has nothing to do with me. So that unauthenticated behavior gives you essentially a cover to hide behind, attack people, lie, create unnecessary opinion, gang up as a team to malign someone. And since social media amplifies lies, lies propagate much faster. So that's one key issue. Second key issue, and we will talk more about it as we get into a more detailed sort of exchange of ideas. I just want to set the stage. Second key issue is business model. The way social media business model is created, they get, as a company, better revenue by saying we have 1 million people, 2 million people, 5 million people. Doesn't matter if those 5 million people are same 1 million people 5 times. So as a result, they encourage fake identity in a sense. So if you have 1 million people registered 5 times, they get 5 million. And as a result, they get more eyeballs and their revenues go up. Essentially, social media's business model is based on making us, user, a product. We are a product they are selling. They have nothing else to sell except sell us in terms of profiling, in terms of multiple eyeballs, in terms of multiple voices, okay? And when they profile us, they dissect in multiple ways: age, sex, behavior, voice, relationships, all our contacts, and they pull from our phones and computers all kinds of information as if they have a right to come in our house and rob it. As soon as we register, we give them a key to our house, saying, come in, check everything out, take whatever you want to take. And that business model, which is on one hand targeted ad, profiling people, number of eyeballs, amplifying lies, all these things encourage and fuel, in a sense, lies, fuel misinformation campaign, and add to ongoing confusion. There are lots of issues to discuss. I will stop here and then have Shashi comment, and then both of us will have a broader conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. And I must say once again, what a great pleasure it is to be with you on this platform, and particularly on a subject in which you are a guru for all of us. I want to point out, you were, of course, yourself at the forefront of one of the most revolutionary technological disruptions in our country's history, which was the telecoms revolution of the 1980s. It's thanks to you we had all those ubiquitous PCO offices throughout the country, STD calls. The acronyms became well known only because you scattered them throughout the country. People saw revolution. I remember writing in one of my books how as late as 1984, our then communications minister had said in Parliament that communications in a developing country is a luxury and not a right, and that as far as he was concerned, the government had no obligation to give better telephone service, and that if the honorable MP who had got up to complain about it wasn't happy with his phone, could he please return it, because there was an 8-year-long waiting list for a telephone connection. So that was the attitude of some people. And you came in and revolutionized it and said, no, communications is a right. It is liberating. It is empowering. It gives people a chance to connect, and it transforms life. And frankly, because you did that, there is no doubt in my life that, in my mind, that we began the change that culminated 10, 15 years later in the ubiquitous mobile phones in everybody's hands. And that's why, though I accept every single one of the criticisms you've made, I'd like to offer the counter view, or a counter view. There are many more things to be said, but one is that there is no doubt that as you attempted with your telecoms revolution, social media has also democratized the space available to the public to communicate their own narrative, to multiply contacts with people, to have access to government, to be able to get their problems attended to. In so many ways, it has been a democratizing and empowering platform that personally I have been prepared to overlook these negatives that you rightly pointed out, because I have felt that what the gains are has outweighed what the dangers are. I don't know, first of all, whether you would agree with me on that proposition.
I agree with that 100%.
Second, how would you compare your revolution of 35 years ago, 30 years ago, with what you have seen in the last 10, 15 years? Obviously, your revolution was at that point about one-to-one communication, but cheaper, more accessible, more freely available. Today, we've got communication with multiple people through social media. Are there any similarities? Are there any differences? How do you see that?
No, I agree with you that what has happened to telecom world over is nothing short of miracle. For the first time in the human history, we are all connected. The key question in front of us is, how do we use this connectivity going forward? When I started my work in India in telecom, I always remind myself that we had only 2 million phones for then 700 billion people. Today, we have 1.2 billion phones. We are essentially a nation of connected billion. So of course, goes without saying that telecom brings about democratization of information, knowledge, decentralization, and also demonetization. In a sense, not demonetization of the government, but demonetization of the value. Telecom today is almost free. 30 years ago, to make a long distance call, international call, used to be a project. Now it is free. We can have this video conferencing at no cost. So there are advantages, which goes without saying. And I should have mentioned that before talking about these two areas, mainly unauthorized behavior and business model, that telecom has changed everything. In a sense, everything we do today is basically obsolete. How do we provide education is obsolete. How do we run government is obsolete. How do we provide health services obsolete. Banking, look at what happened to banking. Not too long ago, we all used to go to bank office. Then we said, okay, now there is teller. Then came ATM. And now bank office building has no purpose. They're closing it, okay? Because you have really empowered every human being with this device. You've empowered me to do my banking. You've empowered me to learn my algebra. You've empowered me to check my blood pressure, look at my heartbeats. And this has become a new life savior. Of course, there are lots and lots of great advantages. But in that environment, how do we use this tool to promote truth, trust, Today, as opposed to truth, we are promoting lies. As opposed to building trust with this device, we are encouraging mistrust. As opposed to, promoting love and peace, we are promoting hate and conflicts and terror. I think maybe we are going through that phase for a while in human history. Maybe in 20 years, it'll all change. We'll come to our senses and we'll say, hey, enough of this playing. Now let's see how we can make better world out of this. So I agree with you, Shashi. Benefits are great. Okay, I would take all these problems any day for the benefit we have. I agree with you.
Thanks, Sam. In fact, I just noticed, by the way, that there's a lovely message on the chat box from one of the people listening to us called Nitin Verghese, saying that I can't agree more. I'm able to connect on a conference call with eminent personalities like Sam Pitroda and me. For a nobody like me is the best example of the evolution of the revolution started by Sam and Rajiv Gandhi in the 80s. And I think that that's very important because communications, I mean, it's so astonishing. I have often told stories about the changes that have come about since then. I mean, it's really extraordinary. Soon after you started what you did, one profession started becoming extinct, and now it is extinct. You know what that profession is? The professional letter writer. With migrant labor, they would go to usually outside the post office or outside the high court. There'd be a row of fellows sitting with a table and pen, or in some cases, the typewriter. And the fellow who is himself illiterate would dictate a letter, which these people would type out and send to the chap's family back in the village and posted usually from that same post office. And then similarly, from this person's point of view, if he got a reply, he would have to go to one of these people to read it to him. Today, can you imagine? He doesn't even need to be illiterate. He can pick up the phone and call his family. These are some of the extraordinary challenges. But I'd like to come back to this question of shall we say, the benefits that you have mentioned, that I've also mentioned, and some of the newer challenges coming up. Now, you have outlined very many of the disadvantages that we have seen. One could add to it. I have talked about some of the advantages because I feel that outsiders have had a chance to develop their own narrative that might not otherwise have been done. But one of the things about social media is because it is media, it has become a source, in many cases, a principal source of information for a lot of people. And that has been problematic, Sam, because there is no verification mechanism. At least if you or I wrote an article for a newspaper in the old days, there would be some editor who would vet it. There would be some fact checker who would make sure that our claims were accurate. It would go through a certain process before appearing in print. It would also take a few days and things would have to be continued to be relevant. Whereas what has happened with social media is that anybody without any verification can type something on their screen and it's up there for the world to see. And for the most part, the audience does not have the education or the training or the filters inbuilt in order to be able to judge whether what they're reading is a reliable source of information or not. We joke about WhatsApp University, but so many people have learned and imbibed so many lies about our history, about our politics, about the backgrounds of our political personalities, everything else, simply by the bombardment of messages on WhatsApp. Now, Facebook and Twitter have started putting some, flags on some of the tweets saying this information is disputed or this claim has not been verified. I don't see them on very many posts, but whenever that comes up, usually this is also challenged by others. How do you feel, Sam, that modern communications can deal with this problem of verification and of accuracy?
That's what I talked about when I mentioned unauthorized behavior. See, if internet, and I have talked about this to a lot of my colleagues globally, that if we were to split internet into two pieces, true internet and false internet. saying, I, as Sam Pitroda, take responsibility for what I say. And here is my credential when I register. Today, when I register on social media, you don't check for any credential. Okay, you don't have any ID verification. You can just make up your name, Joe Blow, and just start tweeting. Okay. So if you can split and say this is real internet, this is real person, and this is sort of fake guys. But then the whole business model will change. There'll be chaos in the industry. So people don't want to do it. But unless and until we take responsibility for what we say, people can get away with saying whatever they want to say. You know, look, leader like Trump started his election campaign by saying Obama is not American. Obama is Muslim. That's how he started his campaign on social media and everywhere. And that really went as far as you could think. And a lot of people started questioning. Now, that's such a simple fact that you can check somebody's passport and say where he was born, whether he's a national or not. But that lie really multiplied. Similar things have happened in India also. You know, you take a person and you target that person. And you target to a point, people begin to believe that. You know, I've seen in Indian social media something long time ago about Motilal Vora. I'm not Motilal Vora, Motilal Nehru. Sorry. And that tweet said that he had 4 wives. Okay. And it just goes on and on. I mean, if you want to lie, you can lie so much about so many things. And then you have a group of people who are assigned the task of propagating that lie. Let's say I hire 200 people in the back room and say, as soon as there is something that Shashi tweets, attack.
Yeah.
You know, you can't fight that because you don't have 200 people to fight it. So I get a lot of friends and well-wishers telling me that, oh, Congress party is not good at social media. And I tell them, my friend, it is not about being good or bad. It is about what you believe in. Do you want to propagate lies? Do you want to hire 500 people and pay them to propagate lies? If you don't want to, then you'll never be good at social media. It depends on what you call good. You got to believe in certain values. That I do not lie, whether it's on social media or in real life. I will not attack anybody on false information. Okay. So you got to decide. If somebody says, no, Sam Pitroda, you know, is not even a high school graduate, I can't fight that. I'll give you one simple example. Very interesting example. Dumb. You know, we had this National Herald court case. So you have to summon people. I happen to be in Chicago, so you can't summon me unless through, you know, proper MEA channels and all that. And you know more about this than I do because you have been a minister there. So one day I find on my door here in Chicago, some fake dress police and some Indian fellow comes and hangs a piece of document, takes a picture and puts it on social media saying Sam Pitroda is absconding in Chicago. Now look at this. Chicago is my home. I can't be absconded in some other place. Okay. And this thing gets multiplied. So people feel that, oh, Sam Pitroda is hiding somewhere. Okay. Now this is totally unauthorized behavior. And you can't really fight that unless you want to be like them. So many times I have friends who tell me, why don't you respond? I said, look, it's not worth responding. Why would I respond? Why would I waste my time? You know, if that's what they want to say or somebody else wants to say, more power to them. I respect that free speech.
But there is a question, sir. Free speech is one thing when it comes to, you know, the old line that you're entitled to your own opinions, but you're not entitled to your own facts.
Exactly.
So if you make up lies, you mentioned four lies.
That's not free speech. That's not free speech.
I mean, you know, I have had so many lies told about me that I gave up trying to.
I know that
people,
you know.
I asked the lawyers, and they all said, you know, it's not even worth using your energy and time and money suing.
I don't pay any attention.
So that's it. You have to learn to grow a thicker skin. But that is genuinely a challenge, and you're quite right to draw attention to it. At the same time, of course, when you say, suppose we could split the internet, the problem will still be who would have the authority to split the internet, who would have the authority to decide what is true and what is false. We have all these fact-checking sites, for example. But now the fact-checking sites are themselves being attacked for allegedly having a bias.
There is no way you can check a lot of these facts. You can twist facts, you can just play
that's it
on the edges, and you can do all kinds of things. But if you identify and say, I take responsibility for what I say, it's very different from fact-checking. Saying when you hear on social media anything under Sam Pitroda's name, that is real Sam Pitroda. Here is his passport, here is his ID, here is his Aadhaar, or whatever you want to say.
So on Twitter, you probably have a verified tick, and then we know it's really you. And anybody else calling themselves Sam Pitroda will not have that same verified tick. Therefore, it's not you. That's what you say. But what people say about you, you have no control over.
No, that's
so Sam Pitroda has...
You can say, I can't control them. Who am I to control them? I mean, they could say, look, I don't like Sam Pitroda's white hair, which is perfectly normal. It's okay for them to say that. I respect that. Saying he should not have a beard. Why is he having a beard? Okay, that's your opinion. I respect that. I love you for that. Okay. But you look at the other side. You know, in the recent election in US, in Georgia, for the 2 Senate seats, $500 million were spent on one seat. Now you look at the kind of investment being made in election campaign. Look at the amount of money we spend in election in India. That itself is a major challenge because it begins the whole process of corruption. Directly, indirectly, depends on how you define corruption. If you spend $500 million in getting to somewhere, somebody is going to ask for your blood. Some point in time. Directly, indirectly. Okay. So connected with this issue is also election funding. Okay. And the money we spend on voting. You take typical election, even in US, voting booths, people managing the booth, security people, judges, counting, tabulating. When you add all of these things, it's a huge, huge expense globally. It is one of the biggest business world over is elections. Okay. And no one talks about that business because everybody has a little piece. And everybody makes money, everybody spends money, everybody again remakes money. Corruption all over the world, according to me, begins with election spending. Not the only piece, but an important piece. So if you don't fix that, you don't fix some of the other pieces.
I agree with you.
That's why I said it's a very complex process.
But if I can come back to one of the points you're making, there's a very interesting comment from Mr. Raghavan Santhanam on the chat box saying that the platform economy is irreversible. Televisions, for example, are supposed to be authenticated sources, but look at their state. There's lies on television also.
Absolutely.
So to blame technology alone for propagating lies seems a little too harsh. Would you defend yourself, or would you concede that he has a point, that maybe lies are coming out in various media, not only social media?
Of course, but we are discussing today social media.
Quite true. So you're not blaming it alone. You're saying that you should blame it.
No. We are discussing social media, so we are commenting on that.
Mm.
And also, you look at
Fair enough.
television, people create their own opinion. They are not reporting news. They are formulating their opinion and they are propagating their ideas. Okay. At the end of the day, I think people will have to recognize that I am empowered with this.
Yeah.
Now I need to be educated. I need to make my judgment about Shashi. And I can't allow somebody else to affect my judgment about Shashi. Okay. No matter what he says, I know who Shashi is. Okay. I don't read anything,
Sam,
for example.
the problem is that, for people like you and me who are in the public eye, those who know us know who we are and how we are, and that we are not capable of the millions of sins that are ascribed to us on social media. But the vast majority of the public doesn't know us personally.
No, that's what I'm
They
saying.
have no other
People
basis
have
to
to
go
be
on.
educated. Each one
And
of us.
So how? So for example, in Kerala now, we are actually trying to get into the schools, educating children on how to read social media, how to filter fake news. Even that is not foolproof, but obviously it requires a fairly literate, educated public. In India as a whole, let's face it, there are people who are not so well read or well educated that they would be necessarily able to acquire that kind of training. And then Vaishnavi Sayal suggests that in India, the way people absorb information sent to them via social media without thinking about it is actually how we are taught from a young age to rote learn without thinking about what we are learning. Learning and absorbing without thinking whatever is thrown at us is part of our conditioning in India. I think she has a very interesting point there, because in fact, what she's saying here is that when you have conditioned an entire population, you go to school, the teacher says something, or it's in your book, you see something in black and white, you mug it up and you regurgitate in the exam. And then you come out and on your mobile phone or on your computer or whatever, you are told something. The same process kicks in and says, that must be true because I've been told that whatever I read is true. Now, this is a big challenge for us. How do we somehow incorporate serious amounts of fact checking into the social media space?
Yeah, I think we are just at the beginning of an information revolution. I don't think we have arrived yet.
Right.
We have all the tools in place. We have internet in space. There are three elements here. One is communication, fiber optics, links, and all that. Second is content. Content is available by best of the best in the world and also worst in the world. And third is context. In what context that fact is available? You can take a sentence out of what you said, and out of context, it has a different meaning. So ultimately, you will have to make everybody self-learner. The idea of education is to make everyone a self-learner. Today's education system is totally obsolete. When I said earlier that everything we do today is obsolete, I really believe that. How do we get admission in school? The process is obsolete. How do we get birth certificate? Process is obsolete. What we have done is we have used digital tool to redo this existing process as opposed to redesigning a new process. See, we took the process that was designed without all these tools. Now we have taken that process and put it in digital format, which is a wrong way to do it. Okay. As opposed to redoing entire process to meet the digital world. So today, In education, the challenge is to make people self-learner. By the time you are 15, you decide what you want to learn. You are educated enough to check facts. You are educated enough to understand what is right, what is wrong, what is fair, what is unfair, what is proper, what is not proper. Okay. That is the kind of education we need.
Yep.
If we continue with the existing education model, we are not going to create people for the information age.
Right, Sam. Well, let's move on from that topic to other things. I mean, there is, for example, today this entire debate on whether the social media companies are like the postman or like the publisher. In other words, who is responsible for what is coming out in social media? I have definitely been thinking about this issue, both as an individual, as a concerned citizen, as a social media user, and as chairman of the committee in Parliament that looks into this issue. So there is one argument where the social media companies say that if Sam were to write a letter to Shashi, it is not our business what Sam writes, we just deliver the letter. Now, by saying, but you are responsible for the nasty things Sam has written to Shashi, you are actually making us like a publisher, as if we have approved what Sam has written. We have not approved it, we've just delivered it. Now, that argument, however, has given way under two kinds of pressures. The first pressure is from other users. You must have seen in America during the election campaign, the relentless attacks on Facebook and Zuckerberg for allowing politicians to get away with false postings. And I think there was one Democrat Party congresswoman who actually tested this by issuing a deliberately false post on Facebook, because Zuckerberg had taken the position that it was not his job to decide whether Mr. Trump's claims were false or not. And under that kind of pressure, Facebook and others have knuckled under and finally started flagging posts. And now we have seen this extraordinary situation after the 6th of January, where the President of America, the head of state, head of government, has been suspended by Facebook, by Twitter, by Instagram, in some cases suspended permanently from appearing on those platforms. How do you feel about this? And does it, I mean, on the one hand, they've been claiming they have no responsibility. Now you've given them responsibility and they're exercising it to stifle a voice. It may not be a voice you like, but isn't democracy, in Patrick Henry's famous phrase, supposed to aver that I will dislike what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it? So tell me, Sam, what are your thoughts about this business?
First of all, when social media company says we are just a post office delivering message, you must remember that the post office delivers your message to me, but doesn't open your message and delivers to the world. So they are not a post office. Post office is very simple. It is one-to-one. You wrote a letter to me, they come and deliver it to me. But what these social media people do is take your letter, open it, and when it is delivered to me, they also deliver to the rest of the world. So when they deliver to the rest of the world, they are like a newspaper. So they are media as well as they are post office. But you can't say, I'm post office when it suits you, and then say I'm media when it suits you. Make up your mind. In reality, you are both. So let's approach it from that angle, because their whole model is, how do I make money? How do I create value? And for that, even if I have to lie something, I'll lie. I'm telling you, with great respect to all these great billionaires and zillionaires, okay? They need to really decide which side of the ethics they are. What do they believe in? What kind of a world they want to build? Is this the kind of world they want to build, where hate gets propagated? but then they'll have to take some hit on their revenue. Okay. Are they prepared to do that? They've become very powerful in the world all of a sudden. These companies don't have no production and they are valued $1 trillion or $500 billion. Okay. So the power they enjoy in terms of valuation is huge. So you summon them, you ask them, but they go back and do whatever exactly what they are doing anyway. They don't change. Do they have morals? Are they willing to stand up and say, my revenue can go in 1/4, but I am going to have authorized behavior? I will say, I really don't have billion people on the internet, but I only have 200 million. Because these 200 million are signed up 5 times. But they are not willing to do that. Okay. So I think they are both. They are post office as well as they are media. Now the question that you raise, very important. Do they really become sort of a judge as to what you publish and what you don't publish? I would say, I believe in free speech. As long as you are willing to say, I take responsibility for it. You can't hide behind something and say, and we don't know who that person is. So we have the message, but we don't know the messenger. I want to connect message and messenger together. Okay. Because I know that when that messenger says something, I can divide by 2. That messenger says something, I can keep it 100%. Then I make my judgment. Even at work, when somebody comes and says to you, "Haan saab ho jayega," you know that he doesn't mean what he says. Ye nahi hone wala hai. And you make judgment. If somebody else says ho jayega, 100% it will get done. Okay. Same with information. Okay. You begin to make your judgment on who to believe, how much to believe, when to believe. But that can only be done if there is authentication. I think the basic problem is authentication. You hide behind curtain.
You haven't responded to the question of, say, firing, suspending, banning President Trump. Authentication is not in doubt. It is Trump who has been saying all this.
I'm sorry. Yes, I agree. I agree. They really banned him probably because they very clearly felt it will add fuel to the existing fire. Because there is swearing in ceremony coming up, and you don't want violence at the swearing in ceremony. So I think it's a wise decision, to be very frank. It may not be a fair decision. Okay. But in the larger public interest, you got to make those decisions sometimes.
Sam, I'm not a fan of President Trump, but let me play devil's advocate. You say it's a wise decision. You can argue it's a wise decision because of the risk of violence on the January 20th inauguration time.
I'm just
doing
that.
Many of these companies have banned him permanently. I think Twitter, for example, has suspended his account forever. No, but if they did that, is that fair? Then the second question that comes up is, and this is where it gets interesting, if they are a private company and they're saying, we are running a clubhouse and you have joined our club and you have misbehaved, we're kicking you out of the club. That's one kind of logic. But are they not using a public resource in terms of, for example, the publicly available broadband facilities, the Wi-Fi that has been built up by public taxpayers' money? I'm just curious. I mean, these are questions. In India, this debate is still ongoing. In fact,
yes.
It's interesting. You've seen a lot of social media posts by people loyal to our present government who are very worried that what was done to President Trump could be done to them. Now, the same companies have not shown the same courage to much lower level purveyors of hate speech and inciting language in our country. So we can have a separate conversation on India. But just on the principle, on the theory of it, how do you feel about these arguments?
I think their decisions will be strictly based on their revenues. Their loyalty is only to their shareholders. Guaranteed in the long run. Now they can twist it here and there and massage it and decorate their voice. But the bottom line is they pay attention to bottom line. I'm glad.
If the Republicans had held both the houses or had held the Senate, would they have done it? Or is it easier to do because they know that the committees that will review their work in the American Congress will now be chaired by Democrats, so banning a Republican president is safe? Am I being too cynical?
No, I don't have the answer, Shashi, but I think what happened on January 6th scared everybody. No one had ever thought that Americans with rifles will enter Senate, Capitol building, and they could have started shooting people. Fortunately, nothing happened. Okay. And that fear has really set in well with social media and saying, at least for a while, let's make this decision. So you don't see people running around on swearing in day with rifles. Okay. Don't allow anybody to encourage violence. And I agree with that. Okay. Now we can later debate what is right and wrong. Okay.
I mean, there is one more argument against that too, Sam. I actually, my biases are the same as yours, but in the interest of this conversation, sure, I want to push you further. Sure. The argument against what you have said is there are laws in every country. In your case, in that case, it's America. The same would apply in India. So if something that is said, for example, violates hate speech laws, incitement to violence laws, you can prosecute the person. Sure. Why should you cut him from having access? Are you not violating his freedom of speech?
I think this is an exceptional case. To me, these are exceptional times. These are not normal times. What happened was not normal. So normal things cannot be applied right now. We can debate that later on. Okay? Let the dust settle down. And that's how I would look at it. Okay.
Okay. Then the other thing is,
don't get me wrong. I don't have the answer.
Are we blaming social media too much? After all, when the president did his incitement, if that is what it was it not principally, first of all, before a live audience and on television? Was it only social media that broadcast his message?
No. But we are discussing.
So therefore, is it fair? Is it fair?
Television
there was a failure of. We have actually a comment from Mr. Raghavan Santhanam. What happened on Capitol Hill was failure of democracy and law enforcement. How can you blame social media for it?
No, we are not blaming social. We are saying it is one element. We are not saying that's the only element. Please don't get me wrong. That's not the only element. Of course, police failed. Of course, intelligence failed. Broadcasting people will say, look, we just broadcast. Okay, whatever president says, it's our job to broadcast. Social media can also say whatever president said, we broadcasted. Content is his responsibility. Very true. I agree. Okay. So I think logic at times doesn't quite work. We got to let things cool down a little bit. Okay.
No, that's fair enough. We have to let it cool down, but then that's an argument for a temporary suspension, not a permanent ban.
I think so. Personally, but time will tell. I don't know.
Fair enough. One of the arguments, of course, that comes up, you rightly in your opening remarks objected to the anonymity, the fake accounts, the anonymous accounts, and so on. But isn't it true that in many societies, particularly repressive societies, the anonymity is the one thing that encourages people to find their voice, because otherwise they'll be scared of being identified by a repressive regime and arrested or worse. I mean, we've seen Iran, for example. We've actually had people executed in some of the Arab countries and in Iran for social media posts or for running social media accounts which have created this kind of messaging. So, I mean, my concern about the Sam is everything seems to have two sides to it. And when it comes to anonymity, I must say that I shared your feeling because I am trolled. The most vigorous abuses are from people who are hiding under names like Deshbhakt and, True Hindu and all of this stuff. You can't really know who they are. And
they don't exist. No, they don't exist.
So, but at the same time, if it wasn't India, if it was some other part of the world, if they revealed their name or if their name was easy to find, might they not face execution? So, I mean, how can you say anonymity is always bad? That's the question.
No, I think the answer to that is, one, you need courage to stand up for right and wrong. Okay. Gandhiji said, if you don't have courage, you can't really make a difference. Okay. But there are other ways to bring to attention the dictators issues like this. Doesn't have to be free speech on social media only. Okay. Plus, no one solution is going to solve all problems. Okay. There is no such thing as one silver bullet. What works in one place may not work in the other place. And that's why I go back to my original comment. It is a very complex issue. It has to do with regulation. Just one, it has to do with regulation. It has to do with technology. It has to do with human rights. It has to do with free speech. It has to do with democracy. It has to do with lots and lots of issues. And we have to deal with it differently in different places for different solutions.
Okay. I have an interesting comment from Dr. Shyam Mohan of Edinburgh University saying that what about the role of algorithms in social media? That you can control the thoughts of individuals by presenting half-truths on their Facebook wall. He says, I believe a government can hijack elections using algorithms to influence people's minds, especially in voting. And this can be effective in people with no prior political stand. What is your opinion on this? Because, I mean, this is something where your technological expertise would be useful.
Agree with him 100%.
Achha.
Algorithms have a big role to play. Algorithms can misguide. It is not just algorithm. It is artificial intelligence, big data, analytics, facial recognition, graphic design. All of these technologies can be manipulated to change opinion. At the end of the day, I believe I need to have my feet grounded in certain fundamental values. To me, those values are, you may agree, you may not agree, is first, truth, trust, inclusion, diversity, democracy, freedom, exclusion, inclusion, love, justice. I have to have my feet grounded in these things. Whenever I see a change in that, I say, I don't belong there. I cannot be in that part of the world. Can I call you back? I'm on a video call. Okay.
No, I personally agree with you, but of course, not everyone does. And certainly, for example, in your list, you have something that is very dear to both you and me, namely diversity. But there are some on the other side of the political equation who see diversity as a weakness, as a danger, as a threat, rather than as something to be celebrated, protected, and promoted.
So they will have to be educated. They will have to be educated that diversity is a fertile ground for innovation. Diversity is something you want to enjoy. What a great country we are that we can go to South. It's very different from North, very different from East. They all look different. They eat different. different language. My God, what a boring life would be if we were all same.
I agree with you.
You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll go back to Geeta now because she's going to give us some of the questions from the audience. It really has been delight sharing these issues. And I think we've covered some of the top issues that are on people's minds about social media. And at least the comments I was getting, I've not repeated any questions, but I've repeated some of the interesting comments that I saw while glimpsing the literally hundreds of messages that came in the chat box from the over 300 people who were listening to us. Geeta, over to you if you'd like to share some specific questions with Sam and me.
Yes, I just wanted to ask Sam, to what extent are the outcomes of today's elections being shaped by social media platforms? Firstly, I'll come along with each question if you can just give me.
I
You'd
think a
like to
great deal.
answer, Sam?
A great deal is influenced today by social media because people are connected, people watch, people are engaged. So I agree that social media has a great role to play, and it is playing a role. Right or wrong, it is shaping the politics.
Yes, it's not in a good way either. Sometimes it's gone wrong. What happened to US last time? Well, other question is, what role do governments have to play in regulation of social media platforms? How can we minimize partisanship without being overtly pro-censorship? Without being overtly pro-censorship.
I would prefer authenticated behavior. There is no sense in having 10 people or one person having 10 names. Okay. I must say that when I registered on social media, I identify myself. I'm a legitimate person. This is my credential, and that's it. And then whatever I say, I'm responsible for it. Like Shashi said, that bhakt doesn't exist.
Yes.
That bhakt could be bhakt at one point. Next time he could be somebody else immediately. And he may be having 5 identity, doing 5 different things because 5 people are paying him for acting. One is paying him to act as a bhakt. Another one is paying him to act as something else.
Very true. Very true. Fake information, fake personalities, and they are utilizing themselves for multiple causes, not just
And
one
multiple
cause.
identity unnecessarily.
And multiple identity. That's right. Multiple causes, multiple identity. Also, Sam, I'd just like to say, is India lagging behind Europe and the US in its data privacy laws?
Well, everybody is, no, I think everyone is having a challenge on data privacy law. My view on it is that information brings about openness, accessibility, connectivity, networking, democratization, decentralization. My life, like everybody else's life, is open. You can find out everything about me if you want to find out and spend enough time to go on internet. Which school I went to, what do I do, what I buy, when I use my credit card. You know exactly what I buy and what I don't buy. So information is open anyway. The question is, what is that I consider private? What is so private to me? There is nothing private to me. If I have to hide something, that's private to me. Am I not paying my tax? That's hiding. Okay. Did I say that I have a degree from this college and I didn't go to that college? That's what I'm hiding. So today we'll have to learn to accept that we are all exposed. And let's behave accordingly. So at the end of the day, information technology forces you to follow truth.
That's it. You're coming to the point now. With this surveillance, I think people will learn that truth is the only answer.
Truth is the only answer. Now we may go through 25 years of juggling on social media. And at the end of 25 years, maybe by 2050, people will realize it's all bogus. Let's stick to truth. Let's trust each other. Because you see, at the end of the day in life, only two things matter to me. One is our planet, and two, our people. Do we take care of our planet? We need planet. Planet doesn't need us. Planet can live without us. We can't live without planet. So first focus has to be environment, global warming, animals, insect, biodiversity, flower, river, plant, you name it. I got to pay attention to that first because that's in my interest. I got to breathe good air. I got to drink good water. Second is people. Doesn't matter what color, race, religion. You are a human being. I love you because you are like me. At some point in time, we were connected. 50,000 years ago, 100,000 years ago. Okay. So how could I fight with you? What is the idea behind fighting with you? You eat different food? Great. I love it. What a boring life it would be for me if I didn't have Chinese food to eat and Japanese food to eat and Korean food to eat and Italian and you, my God, you name it. What a wonderful life it is to have the diversity. I can travel wherever I want. I can enjoy every city in the world. Who am I to say everybody should be like me? Even my wife is not like me. Even my children are not like me. And that's why I love them.
Sam, on your earlier point about data protection, I agree with you that it's a challenge for every country, and perhaps we can't just follow the example of the Europe's GDPR that easily and so on. There are different situations, but one or two core principles ought to be there. I, for example, believe strongly, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, that data should belong to the person who's generated it. And 100%. That if the government or any other entity has a reasonable right, permissible under law to access my data, it should be limited, first of all, by purpose. What is the purpose for which they have that data? And secondly, by time. Once that purpose is fulfilled, they should destroy the data or return it to me. Now, those principles seem so basic to me. Why is it that we even need to debate them, and yet we're going through such a lot of hassle in getting this enshrined into law?
Very good, Shashi. This question will require 1 hour of discussion. Let me tell you. I'll tell you why.
We don't even have 10 minutes left.
Yeah, I'll tell you why quickly. Maybe we could have this conversation at some point in time. Take for example, health information. My health information doesn't belong to me.
Why not?
Because that's the way the systems are set up. My okay. Is somewhere else. My doctor says it is me. My pharmacy says it's me. Come on, give me a break. It's my information.
Correct.
But it's not at one place because everybody wants to control it. And it all started by designing an operating system which allows you to come into your computer, crawl everything and take it out. If I had an overlay on the operating system which says, wait a minute, you can come in, but you can't take anything out without my permission. But that's not the way the systems are designed. Because earlier when systems were designed, nobody paid attention to it. Saying whosoever has an operating system, they are given God-given right to come in my house and check everything and take whatever they want to take. It's a funny thing. Okay. And we have created that environment. So why do we have threat with the cyber security? Because you can come in my system and take whatever you want to take. I have no control over it. So I want to design a system where you can come in, but I'm going to police as to what you take out of me. That will change the whole business model everywhere. Okay. And these are very important questions that you are raising. Okay.
Sam, there's a question just that came on. It says, reverse the digitization and everything will be fine. Go back to the pre-digital days. How do you think of that?
No, I don't think so. I don't think we want to go without, I don't think we want to live without connectivity and communication.
Okay, this one interesting
Look at what
one.
this connectivity has done. I'm telling you, I have been locked up in my house for last 10 months. Literally, I have not moved out of my house. Maximum distance I go is my mailbox. But I spend an hour with my grandchildren. Every day I spend an hour with my grandchildren in San Francisco. Can I do that without communication? No, I can't. So there are, like Shashi said, great advantages that communication brings to human civilization. We can't go back. Then we might as well go back to the caves. Okay, then why have a car? Okay, then why have all the furniture? Why have TV? You know?
That's an extreme.
Yeah, but no, it's a question of drawing a line. The point is development moves on. Technology moves on. Science defines future. Without science and scientists, there is no future.
Okay.
Today, science says this is communication technology. Tomorrow, science will say this is longevity, that people will live to be 200 years. Then we can't say, okay, at 100 years, kill everybody. You know?
Well,
so I think development has to go on. You know, a lot of good will come with some bad. It's like knife. You can cut a tomato and you can also kill somebody. That doesn't mean we don't want to use knife. Very simple.
I think that's a very good analogy,
well,
Geeta.
Shashi, just one question. If it's that's either of you can answer, or maybe it will be Sam. Last one from me. Is the Election Commission of India capable of monitoring content, expenditure, and violation of code on social media platforms?
Answer is no. No.
No.
They are capable. That's a question. Their answer is no.
Okay.
But they can look at complaints. I mean, I think that's the answer, Sam. Let's say that they are not capable, and that's probably true. But when a candidate or his representative sees a false, defamatory, illegal, or other post about him on social media, he can complain or she can complain to the Election Commission, the local authority in the state concerned, and they have to take cognizance. The problem is time after time, we are seeing that such complaints are not acted upon in suitable time. I mean, we have seen certainly in the 2019 elections, a number of cases, it has been quite unusual that anytime there has been a complaint against the prime minister or the president of the ruling party, as he then was during the campaign, that the ruling usually came when the voting was already over in that particular complaint area. Some others, however, were given notices of explanation while they were still active campaigning. But I must say, in all fairness to the Election Commission, I don't think that they took action even against opposition MPs who didn't respond in time. So the question is not just are they capable of it? Sam is right. They're not capable of monitoring the whole world's media, but they should have the capacity to promptly investigate complaints they receive and take immediate action in a meaningful time frame. To do so well after any useful purpose can be served. When, for example, a communal message has been delivered in election speech, or a defamatory message has been delivered in a speech, or a falsehood has been uttered, a complaint should be attended to ideally within 24 hours. It is usually not.
I agree with Shashi, but I think I want to remind all of us that democracy is work in process. It never ends. We have to defend democracy, and institutions are a very important part of a democracy. When institutions get captured, to some extent that was happening in US, when judiciary responds to authority, when election commissioner responds to authority, when bureaucracy responds to only authority, we got to worry.
Yes.
I think the real challenge for all of us is to work at democracy, to preserve freedom, autonomy, constitution, and make sure that our institutions are independent. And that is a greater concern to me than anything else in India today.
It's happening. It's not allowed to process. The institutions are all getting under the influence of the rulers
But that's the
of the
time we
country.
have to stand up, and that's the time people have to speak up. That's the time people have to align. Okay? And that's the time you need courage. Okay? And it's in larger interest of the public to do that. And it has nothing to do with one party or the other party. It has to do with the basic constitution. Okay?
Well, that should show a lot of rife that India is going through at the moment, especially with the farmers, as you are aware. Well, I don't want to get into that at all. So, Shashi, anything else to say?
I just want to very much thank Sam for taking so much time, spending an hour and a quarter with all of us, and with the very enthusiastic audience we had at the peak. I think we had about 312 people, Sam. And of course, there'll be a much larger audience for the recording of this conversation, as well as the streaming on Facebook. I do want to say that we're very pleased you did this for the All India Professionals Congress. Dr. Geeta Reddy, whom you probably knew as a senior politician in the erstwhile Andhra Pradesh, is also the chairman of the South Zone, the vice chairman of AIPC, and the head of the South Zone of AIPC, covering all our southern states. AIPC itself is fully digital. Even to join AIPC, the only way you can do it is to go on the internet, www.profcongress.com, and sign up. You can't submit a form, you can't go and meet somebody, you can't do any sifarish. If you don't go up and you don't sign up and you don't demonstrate that you are a professional and so on, declare that you are, you cannot join. So we're trying to make it a very clear digital 21st century professional organization. Secondly, we have a very lively platform only open to members for discussion of key issues. So as a result, public policy suggestions, whereas the AIPC, like sort of the Rotary Club model, is organized in local chapters, and those local chapters under the states, and those states are under the zones, and the zones under the center. At the end of the day, we need to have more verticals where a doctor in Odisha can give a comment about a public health issue like the vaccine controversy in India today, and a doctor in Kerala who's from a different zone, different chapter, different area, can contribute and disagree or agree and build on the conversation. We have created these kinds of platforms. We have AIPC Inspire, which is an in-house magazine for all our members and fellows. Very interesting pieces there. We would be very honored, Sam, if you yourself would write, offer us your thoughts on issues of interest to Indian professionals. You are the epitome of the professional who came in to serve the Indian public and to serve the Indian, the future of India through your various technology missions. And I would think that if you could write for us about, for example, what you learned from there and what I think we could all learn from you today, 35 years later, that would be fascinating. And we can also make sure that we offer it after Inspire. We can also put it on the National Herald, the pro-Congress newspaper. There are various outlets we can turn to. And this video will itself be uploaded on our website because it's an AIPC event. So I'm sorry for the shameless plug for the AIPC, but since a large number of AIPC professionals and fellows are watching this, but there are many others who have logged in who don't know AIPC, I wanted them to realize that this is the kind of advantage they would get from joining us. I certainly want to thank all the fellows who did join, all the fellows who helped Geeta to organize this event, and of course, above all, Sam, for donating his time so generously to us. Sam, it won't be the last time that we'll be troubling you.
Anytime, Shashi, I'm available anytime. It's my privilege to be with you all. And I want to thank you for the opportunity.
That is really most kind. Thank you all
and you have to just ask. And it's my job to do it. Okay.
Thank you.
When you ask me to write, it's tough to write. But I can talk to somebody and find some young person who can write it. That's better for me.
You can dictate. That's
I can have a conversation
Yes.
with the young person, and then he can document it.
transcribe it. Yeah, we can do that. This conversation can be transcribed as an opportunity.
Just
Great.
record it.
Many thanks.
Just
Yeah, you
record
can do
it.
that.
Thank you.
Anybody who wants to have a conversation with me on professional subjects, I'll be happy to do it, whether it's engineering. You know, I'm on the US Academy of Engineers.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
Okay.
and we have a lot of interesting conversations going on there, and I can share some of that with you. You know, I can talk about, you know, sort of professionals in health or whatever you want, whatever I know. Not that I'm
That's
an
very,
expert on everything.
very nice of you. Thank you
I'll
so
be happy
much.
to do it.
We'll
Well,
keep
we're
in
lucky
touch.
to have you today. Thanks. And thank you, Geeta, for all you've done to make this such a rip-roaring event.
Thank you also. Thank you so much for being
Thanks
there
for
and so
speaking.
supportive as a chairman.
And
You're the
thanks,
most
everybody.
supportive person to be our chairman here. So
Thanks,
Let's
Anand.
work
let me,
together. We have to take our country back from the bad guys. Thank you all. And Jai Hind.
thank you.
Thank you,
Namaste.
Sam.
Jai
Thank you,
Hind.
Geeta. Thanks. Jai Hind.
Jai Hind. Namaskar.